Welcome everyone to the Places to Grow collective learning event. Places to Grow, for those who doesn't know what Places to Grow is a catalyst for excellence in early childhood development. And we are active in Central Eastern Europe, in Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. And we are working with incredible partners to push towards systemic change in early childhood development in these three countries. And we have this series of events called collective learning, and we started collective learning events to provide an opportunity, space, and time for organizations who are interested in early childhood development to share their work, to share their insights, and hopefully to make new connections and support each other and work towards a better early childhood development around the world. So today we have a very, very special event with very special guests. The topic of this collective learning event is business and early childhood development. And I think it's a very unique approach or a very unique perspective because usually when we are talking about early childhood development, we are talking about NGOs and public sector and health sector. But so many times we don't think about the business and how business could be engaged in developing early childhood development and at the same time benefit from a better early childhood development system. So the title of this collective learning event is Why Business Should Care About Early Childhood, Impact, Opportunity, and Responsibility. And today you will hear from Sarah Hess, Associate Director of the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood. Thank you very much, Sarah. You will hear from James Sinfield, who is a delivery manager of the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood. And you will also hear from Karin Nošková, who is a program manager of the Volkswagen Slovakia Foundation. You will hear two presentations. The first one will be from Sarah and James. The second one will be from Karin. And after that, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask anything from Sarah, James, and Karin. So I would encourage you either to write down your questions as you hear the presentations, or you can also post those questions into the chat. How the Q&A will go, you either raise your hand, like your Zoom hand that you can find at the bottom of the screen. There is a raise hand icon, and then I will call your name, and then you can ask your questions live. Or if you are a more shy person, you can also put your questions in the chat, and I will follow the chat and read out your questions. Okay? I guess that's all the housekeeping that needed to be done. So please welcome, and you can unmute yourself and also clap your hands if that's something that you want to do. Please welcome Sarah Hess and James Sinfield from the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maxim. It's really, really lovely to be here. It's also nice. I just realized whilst you were speaking that you didn't have to ask how to pronounce my surname, or indeed you pronounce it better than I do, as my husband is Hungarian. So it's very nice. I only clocked that just as you were talking. I'm very conscious that I'm speaking in English today to a whole fantastic room of people to whose first language isn't necessarily English. So please forgive me if I talk too quickly. Please tell me. And also, our presentation is quite UK centric. So I will caveat that. But what is so brilliant to be in this virtual room of brilliant people today is to kind of share our learnings, what we've been doing with our what we call our Business Taskforce, our Royal Foundation Business Taskforce, and talk a bit about the why and the how of all that. So James is my colleague. He's here with me today, and between the two of us, we are going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to. I'm going to kind of give some of the background. James is going to do the fun bit and talk about the actual responses from business and examples of today. And I'm really keen to hear afterwards in the Q&A section your reflections on this, what your experience of working with business has been like, and yeah, how we can all learn from each other, because certainly we feel like we've made a good start, but there's so much more we can do in this space with business. So now I'm going to share my screen, which is the bit where you kind of hope it goes. I actually can't see you when I share my screen for whatever reason. So Maxim, you're going to have to tell me if I cut off, or if no one can hear me, or if everyone falls asleep. Please do tell me.
I'll do that. Thank you.
But yes, let me start. Well, I should say I'm Sarah Hess. I'm from Associate Director at the Royal Foundation, and joined by my colleague James, as I mentioned. But we work for the Royal Foundation, and I think I'll start by explaining what that is, because it's a fairly quirky concept in some ways, and then I'll talk about what our role within that. So the Royal Foundation exists in order to pioneer the work of the Prince and Princess of Wales. And we address some of society's biggest challenges. That's homelessness, conservation, mental health, community and connection, and a whole range of quite complex issues, but they do all have this kind of common thread. And that is that the thing they sort of have in common is that in order to address them, we need to tackle kind of the root of them and create transformative change to build a happier, healthier, and more nurturing society. And of course, most of us here today will know that it's our relationships, surroundings, and experiences in the first 5 years of our lives which have such a huge role in shaping who we become and the role we have in building that happier, healthier society. And so it really, we do believe that it is our collective approach to early childhood that can shape our whole society. And that's why the Princess is so very passionate about early childhood, and why she set up within the Royal Foundation what we call the Centre for Early Childhood. And it really is her great passion, her life's work. And it comes from that experience, those experiences that she's had throughout her career, understanding the long-term benefits of focusing on early childhood. We have a very unique position as a Royal Foundation, and we really see that as a big responsibility to drive that societal change. And of course, an enormous part of society is business. And that's why, or one of the reasons certainly why, that we've always felt that business needs to be part of our conversation. And there is such a huge role that businesses can play, which we're going to talk a lot more about. So this was particularly recognised, and sorry, this just pausing on this slide here, this is kind of our mission as a Centre for Early Childhood, and kind of highlights the sort of strengths that we have, particularly unique to us. And that's kind of the research we do, the campaigning we do, and the public awareness stuff we do, and the collaboration that we try and help make happen. And particularly that kind of big convening moments is something that we know that we can do better than most other people, but just because of the platform that we have. So we really take that responsibility very seriously. But as I was saying, that role in business, which big part of society, was really recognised 2 years ago when we convened 8 CEOs in a beautiful boardroom in NatWest in the City of London, and asked these CEOs a question, a very powerful question, I think, which has really kick-started this conversation that's now kind of been going for 2 years. How and why should businesses prioritise early childhood? I'm going to talk a lot about that today, but since this moment, this which is all captured in this photo here, there's been so much work that's been done and so much we've learned, and it hasn't always been it hasn't always been straightforward, but really kind of working out how to drive that impact. And I'm really excited about sharing our journey so far with you guys today. So I put this slide in. I said to James, should we put this in? Because I think everyone here in this group, most of you will know these, and they're very UK centric. But I think it's really important, and I'm particularly conscious of talking around this stuff when we have James from Harvard here as well, who knows this stuff much better than me. But I think it is important always to provide this context, and certainly whenever we go out and talk to businesses, it's really vital that we talk around this context and lay this argument out very clearly, that we really need to make people understand the importance of early childhood, and this importance comes from, there's a lot of science behind it. I mentioned earlier that the princess sees this as her great work, and she's really involved in the science of early childhood, and of course she's been to Harvard and learned an awful lot on that trip, and it comes from these kind of facts that that perhaps most of us know, but most people kind of find quite mind-blowing when they first hear them. 1 million neural collections made every second in the early years is just an extraordinary thought. And the idea that 90% of a child's brain weight is made by the time they are 5. And this scientific background that the princess has really taken on board, does come from her early career when she was visiting so many crisis centres, meeting people who experience homelessness, meeting people in prisons, and really kind of understanding the connection between those two things, that bridge between early childhood and later life outcomes. Of course, the reality of today and the reason why these things are going wrong is that we do have, and again, apologies, these numbers have been very UK centric, but it's a stark picture today, and it's hard not to kind of feel pretty depressed by some of these numbers that we're looking at. About 36% of children under 5 living in poverty in the UK, 1 in 5 parents feeling that they struggle to provide food, nearly a third of children starting school without achieving a good level of development, and much higher in areas of most deprivation. So these numbers can feel a little bit overwhelming, and it's really important that we take these and really translate them into a language that business can understand. And I think it's not just scientists and doctors who know the importance of the early years, it's also economists. And of course, lots of us are familiar with James Heckman's study around US interventions, which demonstrate the highest rates of returns when we invest in those early years. And when we were talking to the Business Taskforce about this, that's what got them going. That's what made them really understand how urgent the conversation around early childhood really is. So really, the Business Taskforce feels like almost a gap to bridge between the scientific community, whose evidence unequivocally makes a case for prioritising early childhood, and the wider business community, who have the resources, reach and influence to really drive significant change. And I think it's always nice to have a quote from the princess in this, and this was a quote that was in the Financial Times, actually, a piece she wrote at the same time as we launched the Business Taskforce, and I think is a really good sort of distillation of what we're trying to do. As the world becomes ever more complex, we have to invest in early childhood now as a down payment for our collective future. If business and commerce embrace the significant issue, including how better early childhoods would affect their own organisations, both now and in the long term, we can and will transform the lives for generations to come. So, the task force itself, and here are the 8 businesses that make up our Business Taskforce. As you can see, these are deliberately very big corporations, and that was, very much a decision that we came to, that we wanted to be able to, with these companies, reach as far as possible. It's not perfect, it's not as diverse as I would like it to be, but certainly in the UK, these companies, have real clout and real authority. And I think this is a really important point when I look at these logos. What is so important about the work we do, and we understood quite quickly that it couldn't be about us, if you like, selling early childhood to these businesses. It had to come from business to business. And I think that is the kind of element that makes the report, which we'll come and talk about, so powerful, that these are businesses who understand business. It's a bit of a basic thing to say, but they understand the many challenges, the many competing priorities that business and commerce face every day. And therefore, for them to make the argument that early childhood is something that every business should be thinking about makes it so much more powerful. And actually laying out both short-term gains and long-term gains was something that we realized quite early on in our journey it was going to be very critical. And this is where it helped having Deloitte on our task force, because they quite quickly realized, or the whole task force realized that Deloitte was probably the person to deliver this, that we should set out a real business case for every business to kind of wake up and realize the importance of early childhood. And I say this like it was really easy that we came to this quickly. Like when we first got these businesses in the room, we had some long conversations about the challenges and, where to focus. And it was fascinating, but, it didn't, it was challenging at times as well. And I think it's always important to acknowledge that it wasn't, totally plain sailing. But once we'd kind of really thought about it and realized how challenging it was going to be, we realized we did need that business case very clearly laid out in a way that we knew that Deloitte could deliver. And so Deloitte went away and wrote that report, which we launched last May, with the big headline figure of 45.5 billion, which could be generated for the UK economy annually. There are, however, 3 parts to the report, and that number is critical, as you know, in terms of getting attention, grabbing headlines. But what we didn't want it to be was just a number. It had to be more than that. And the report is 3 parts, I would say. The number itself, the economic argument. Then we lay out a kind of framework in terms of how businesses can get involved. And then the third point is the kind of really practical stuff, like what is going on? What are the businesses on the task force doing? And what are other businesses that we can learn from? But just to pause quickly to go through the number, which has 3 different components to it. And I think in the work that all of us do, one of our challenges is we have these kind of long-term, short-term ROI. And if we're honest, a lot of what we're doing now with early, direct delivery, excuse me, the ROI won't necessarily be seen for another 20 years, excuse me. And we wanted to reflect that in the number that we were putting out there. So the 3 elements that the number is comprised of is the 12.2 billion from equipping people with improved social and emotional skills in early childhood. This is the piece about the future of our workforce, and get really excited about this because it's so topical when we look at the way the workplace is changing, and in ways that we probably can't even imagine right now, with AI coming in and changing the way we work at quite an alarming pace. And I think that's only going to get more so. And therefore, those social and emotional skills, which is something the Princess feels particularly strongly about, are going to be even more critical. And you've got the likes of, many Silicon Valley names. It's best not to name them at the moment, I think, but the talking about the importance of agency, resilience, self-awareness is actually critical, more critical than learning how to code these days, because to be honest, that will be automated. So there's that piece. I suspect that will grow. There's a 16.1 billion from reducing the needs to spend public funds on remedial steps for adverse childhood experiences. That's the more kind of traditional way of calculating ROI in early childhood. And then thirdly, there's an important kind of very business-focused piece on the 12.2 billion, which we could generate for the economy by supporting working parents. And that's in making parents feel really confident, being able to return to work, being able to do the careers that they love, be productive in their jobs. One thing that we broke down as well as that number was then kind of moved on to the kind of how businesses can have an impact. And this is, once you've got people's attention, you need to then deliver the how. And one challenge that we often get when we talk to a new business is who maybe just hears the word business and early childhood, is almost a kind of a panic, slightly like, oh, goodness me, I can't be expected to look after the children of my employees. And what's really important with what we said with this report is that there's a number of ways you can come at this. And the breadth of the report, I think, is probably its greatest strength. And yes, businesses have a responsibility as employers looking after, well, in the UK, it's about 4.5 million parents of under 5s in the workforce and looking after those guys. But there's more they can do. It's broader than that. And yes, also as employers, we are not expecting every employer to be able to deliver the same incredible benefits that you get at Aviva, Deloitte, and NatWest, where both parents get 6 months of full pay. But every employer can think about ways they can better support working parents and carers, even if it's potentially what might feel quite small cultural shifts. And not just as employers. So then what we've really pushed our task force and beyond to think about is, what other roles do you have and as a provider of goods and services and spaces, I would say as well, there's enormous amount of impact that businesses can have on how they design for their customers. And there's some really nice examples in the task force about IKEA being a more kind of traditional way of how they looked at products that they can provide, because they provide toys and games in their store. Lego, another very kind of more traditional way of looking at how their how their products can support early childhood. Actually, it's not just about the kind of Legos. It's kind of easy for Lego in a way. It's their bread and butter. But for someone like NatWest and how they work with earlier settings, James is going to talk to you a bit about that shortly. But that was actually a kind of more innovative way of approaching this, and has had some really interesting impact. And then the third way is really asking our task force and other businesses to be influential members of communities and wider society. And we all know that businesses have a really strong voice. They play such an important role in society, which is kind of what took us to this place in the first place. And it's not just about the how of kind of how business can do it, it's kind of where they can focus. And these are the 5 opportunities for impacts that we identified. Again, showing kind of breadth of what businesses can do and how they can involve themselves with early childhood. It's not just about, raising money for a local charity. It's not just about changing, improving workplace policies. There's so many things that they can do. And I'll quickly talk through them. And then I'm going to hand over to James, who does, as I say, does the slightly more fun bit of kind of bringing these to life with the examples from the task force. But first, number 1, improving early childhood education and care. I have to say this is one I feel particularly passionate about, given how crucial for business how crucial, how businesses rely on childcare in order that a large proportion of their employees can actually work. And I think that's something that businesses haven't necessarily got their head around in the UK anyway. But the importance of quality as well as quantity of infrastructure for childcare. And the second piece around strengthening social and emotional skills, something that Princess feels so passionately about, as I mentioned, and we have recently launched a report, not so much to do with business, but around our social and emotional framework, which we're extremely proud of. The third piece around supporting parents and caregivers, again, not just about policy, it's about those cultural things that you can do to be better and making sure the parents that you look after are able to go home and be the best parents at home, as well as deliver in the workplace. 4, secure the necessities. It's about really helping the families most in need. And then 5th, transform the culture, which, to be honest, all of these things ladder up to, and that's really about that bigger piece of making sure that everyone understands the importance of early childhood. But I will pause there and hand over to James, because he gets to now kind of talk through those things and bring them to life. James, are you there? I can't see you.
I am here. Can you? Well, I'm off to apologize. My webcam is not working, but my phone camera is. So if you can scroll along the top until you see James's iPhone, you'll be able to see me. My name is James. I'm a delivery manager at the Centre for Early Childhood. Sarah's dead right in that I get the very fun job of delivering the Business Taskforce initiatives. So this afternoon, I'm just going to show you some of the different initiatives that we're working on. I appreciate some of these are going to be UK-based companies, but our first partner is Lego, who needs no introduction at all. Like Sarah said, they are the pioneers of play. Everything they do is about play. And what is more, they're already doing educational things in the early years space. So when they partnered with us, we developed a range of Build Me Emotional Lego sets. And these are really amazing Lego sets that children can use that have a range of emotions based on little Lego bricks. And so Lego have built these amazing Lego sets and donated 3,000 of them to early years organizations across the UK. And along with these Lego sets, they're providing a series of training videos for early years providers based off our Shaping Us framework report, which outlines the core skills of social emotional development. Teachers and early years providers can use these videos to engage their children that they're looking after with these toys. So this is a really interesting example of how an organization can use their existing capabilities and redirect them towards the early years setting specifically. Sarah, do you want to go into our next partner? Thank you. So our next partner, Aviva, is a leading insurance provider in the UK. And I'm sure you're thinking, what could they be doing in the early years space? Well, Aviva is leading in its parental policies. They offer equal parental leave up to 12 months, with the first 6 months being at full pay. And because of this, they've attracted many people to their organization and built up an incredible culture within the organization. So I'm just going to stop there and show you a video. Sarah, if you could press play, that'd be fantastic.
I just feel like I don't have to hide being a parent when I'm at work. I can truly be my whole self.
Work have always been very supportive when it comes to being around in those early few months of Teddy's life.
As a working parent of a child with additional needs, it feels really liberating to work for an organisation that keenly considers my work-life balance.
It even knows that our people are the heart of our business. And so it's really important to us to support working parents and carers so they can be as successful at home as they are at work.
I think it's vital for everyone to support those people who are raising children and raising that next generation.
Thank you. So, as you've just seen there, these are all genuine opinions from people who work at Aviva. And so we've just had a sort of initiative where we've captured a series of videos of these authentic conversations between working parents at Aviva. And we can use our platform as the foundation, as the Centre for Early Childhood, to share these videos to help break down the stigmas around parenting and help provide managers with the requirements of how to engage with their working parents. So this example shows us that even if the business doesn't have an early years specific product, they can still be using their voice to promote early years development. Next, please, Sarah. So Iceland. Iceland is a UK-based supermarket. It has millions of customers and more than 30,000 employees. Although it's called Iceland, it is very much a UK-based retailers. Iceland has been a great partner to work with. They're a business who operate out there. By that I mean they've given us the opportunity, a really great opportunity to engage with people out in the world. So what we've been working on with Iceland is providing in-store experiences through posters to encourage the conversation of their children's emotions. So the posters that you can see there display a range of emotions, and they're all at a child-friendly height. And so we are encouraging parents, whilst they're doing their supermarket trip, to engage with their children and encourage a conversation about their emotions. This has been rolled out in over 900 different stores across the UK, and the 30,000 staff have also been given training. We've had loads of really positive feedback from customers, but also a lot of the colleagues as well. I think it's very important to remember that these organizations have an incredible reach with their staff. So this really sort of shows how an organization can use its space creatively to engage with the early years. Next, please, Sarah. So NatWest, as Sarah mentioned, is a major bank and lending provider in the UK. What they have done is they've looked at their product to impact the early years sector. They reviewed their lending policy to be more early years friendly and created a business plan framework that early years organizations can use for free. Essentially, this is a blueprint of how to set up their own early years business and successfully apply for loans. As Sarah touched on earlier, it's a really great example of how organizations can use their product to benefit the early years sector, where ideas might not have been as straightforward. They've provided a really creative alternative to engage with it. And finally, IKEA. I think we all know who IKEA are. The Swedish store has been running a very creative fundraising campaign to support baby banks in the UK. It's called Skogstuva, and I did rehearse that at least 10 times before this presentation. And each sale from their soft toy collection goes towards a fundraising campaign for baby banks in the UK. So far, this has raised over £133,000. IKEA have also been supporting baby banks all across the UK by donating their products, so whether these are baby blankets, cots, beddings, mattresses, you name it. So you might think that this is the most obvious way in which an organization can support the early years through donations and fundraising, but it has a much larger impact than that, as it's breaking down the stigmas around baby banks, securing the necessities, and transforming the culture. And by having sort of campaigns that are openly talking about the use of baby banks, it really encourages others to acknowledge the benefit of these systems. So the secrets to our success is really utilizing the strengths that these businesses already have, understanding that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather it's a creative approach to working with these businesses and understanding what they can provide uniquely to benefit early years. And that's my bit done.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sarah and James, for this presentation. Extremely exciting. I really liked how you focused on translating a scientific argument into a clear message to the business, and also how you found those low-hanging fruits, how to engage these businesses into paying attention to early childhood development and do the first steps to engage in this whole area. I really liked your approach. Thank you again. So keep your questions on your notebook or in your head if you're able to do that. I know I'm not, so I write down everything. And we will have one more presentation from Karin from the Volkswagen Slovakia Foundation. And after that, we will have the Q&A. Karin, the floor is yours.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen, and I work for Volkswagen Slovakia Foundation, and I am responsible for inclusive education and women's empowerment. So over maybe the last 2 years, we in Volkswagen Slovakia Foundations we're thinking very, very hard about how to reflect on the current needs in the world and especially in Slovakia, and we decided to reconstruct our whole strategy. So as I present you our approach, please consider it's fairly new, starting from this year. So even though we are very committed, we are just starting with these initiatives. So as we were thinking about how to approach our whole strategy, step number one for us was to clearly define our vision. And as you can see, the vision is through innovation towards an educated and respectful Slovakia for all people without a distinction. So education plays a very important role there, especially inclusive education. And as we were having various discussions with external and internal stakeholders, they express the need for us to have inclusive education as one of our biggest priorities. But as we were looking deeper into the topic of inclusive education, we were thinking that firstly, it might be really important and useful for us to look at the global challenges and already develop frameworks such as SDGs, and obviously SDG number 4 is the most relevant for inclusive education. And there we were thinking, okay, how we can make it, how we can focus on some specific areas that make sense for us locally. So that's why we decided to focus on education from early childhood to the end of primary school, both focusing on the children and the teachers or the school personnel. But then also we understood that we need to understand the local challenges. Sorry, I have typo there. And then that's why we organize roundtables with local experts, teachers, NGO leaders, researchers, formal government officials, who could provide us a very unique perspective how we can really create informed strategy based on evidence. And then we conducted very comprehensive desktop research. This picture is just illustrative, but we look at locally specific white papers or other studies where we could learn more about the trends and the challenges in Slovakia or Central Europe. That's why we decided to focus on 3 main areas. Number 1 for us is really supporting the implementation of inclusive educational methods, because in Slovakia, usually there is a belief that inclusive education is not possible. So we would like to debunk the myth of that. And for that, we also need really skilled teachers and school personnel. But under that, and what's the base of it, is really supporting children from the early age, even before they enter kindergartens or preschools. So they are not already being behind their peers. And for that, we created a framework, organization criteria for each organization that we are considering cooperation with. And it has 6 main principles. So firstly, there's the main one that obviously the partners or the organization's project needs to be clearly aligned with our 3 main areas of focus within inclusive education, but organization need to have also a clear theory of change and a project and innovation that is scalable, that can bring about a systemic change over a couple of years. But also, especially in the context of early childhood development, we understand that it is very important that the partners build long-term partnerships across different sectors and areas so they can maximize the impact. And lastly, it is important for us that the organization comprehensively and continuously measure their impact. So as you can see, we don't want to supplement the state. We just want to support the innovations, and we hope that over a couple of years, maybe the state will adapt them. And we will be able to focus maybe on different other areas. As I already mentioned, we are just starting with the strategy. So for this year, we just picked the partner Cestavon, A Way Out, which is quite established in Slovakia. They have their program Omama, which employs Roma women from marginalized communities who then work with mothers and their children directly in the communities and help them develop their children cognitive, social, emotional skills. However, again, we don't want to support the service provision. So that's why this year we are supporting a brand new year-long program for early childhood care assistants, mentors, and management, because we believe that it's important to share the knowledge and expertise that Cestavon has. And this project has potential to really empower new and existing providers, but by sharing this knowledge and working together with different partners to maximize the impact. However, since we are at the very beginning, we are still facing different challenges, or we as organization, as foundation, has a lot of questions. I think more questions than answers, and we are thinking about whether obviously this is the right approach, and which interventions in early childhood development are the most effective ones, whether to focus on just one area or maybe focus on combinations of different initiatives in different areas. And then we are facing another dilemma, a very current one now, in the context of Slovakia. What are the pros and cons of supporting ESD platforms versus individual organizations? And I already touched on the number 3. We really want to foster multi-sector collaboration in ESD, not only in terms of public and private partnerships, but across different sectors: educational, health, social. And lastly, even though we are one of the biggest foundations in Slovakia, we are still considering the challenges very small in terms of the impact that we can make alone. So we are thinking about how we can engage different corporate partners and persuading them to work with us collaboratively to maximize the support that we can provide as private sector in this area. So I'm looking forward to hearing even your ideas, suggestions, questions, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Karin. I think it was very interesting to see and hear your priorities and where you are focusing. And I'm sure you will receive a lot of emails after this meeting from participating organizations. All right, so here we came to the Q&A session. We are a little bit off track, but we still have like 15 minutes for questions and answers. So you know the drill. If you have a question, please raise your hand with the tool on the bottom of your Zoom screen. That means you want to ask a question, and then I will call out your name, and then you can unmute yourself and ask a question or put your question into the chat. Who will have the first question? All right, Reka, please.
I will start then. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Reka Egedűs from Hungary, running the organization Homestart Hungary, which is a much, much smaller organization, although 25 years old in next year. But compared to Homestart UK and Homestart in many countries, we are really, really invisible. We are mostly working in prevention and supporting parents. My question is that, and we have this, like most of you, I think, in this section, the post-communist background and heritage of not understanding volunteering problems, very, very difficult to reach out for funders and companies. And my question is, because we are really struggling, like most of the NGOs, with finding funders who will accept us just to run our core activity without doing something really, really great and special. But still we are doing something really great and special, but we cannot really reach, because of this invisibility, the companies. And my question is that, is there a possibility or the act of creating a kind of database of companies who really want to be involved supporting ECD organizations? or parenting or parenting support organizations, because that's what sometimes the first step is, to put so much energy to find out what are the goals, the support system at a company. I mean, that's what I'm facing constantly. I cannot even reach the person who is working with NGOs within a company. Thank you.
Thank you, Reka. And I don't know who wants to take the question.
I'm happy to give a go, and then maybe Karen. But I think it's really hard for any kind of NGO or charity to reach the right piece of business. We really recognise that. We haven't got a plan to build a database. It's a really interesting thought, though. So I think that's worth us considering. We've been doing it in a kind of difficult to scale well, but we're doing kind of roundtables where we're bringing companies and local charities together, and in that local, or even regional kind of way, we've found some success but I appreciate that's not easy to replicate, and I really hear you about how hard it is, and we certainly feel a responsibility to kind of be that matchmaker because of our profile. But I think it's a really interesting point that you make, and I know how extremely hard it is to reach the right people, and it comes down to finding the right individual who actually also just cares about early years, and that's often where even in my experience, working with these big corporates, is often the individual, not the business. And that doesn't make it any easier, but it is about kind of trying to build those relationships with the right people who show interest, and finding the right person in companies that we massively struggle with it as well. And I'm sorry I don't have a much easier solution for you, but certainly as we move forward, bringing people together is definitely something we see as a responsibility of ours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I don't know, Karin, do you want to add something to this?
For me, it's also quite difficult to answer the question because I don't know the Hungarian context. In Slovakia, we have a very specific funding. It's called 2% from the income taxation, which organizations can donate to foundations or different organizations, and that's the biggest. For at least for us and for all foundations, the biggest income that we receive. But maybe what might be helpful, just suggestions. Again, I don't know the context, but at least finding an employee in some organizations, even though they might not work in, I don't know, ESG or other similar departments, and maybe just asking them so they can direct you to a different person. Another suggestion is that usually they are smaller, at least in our foundation. We offer smaller grants to starting organizations, so we can test them, and then we might consider bigger collaborations within Slovakia.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Karin. Just being aware of the time limit, please ask as short questions as possible to the point so we can take more questions. So next is Liana, and after Liana, we will have Ivanka. Thank you.
Yeah, I put something in the chat. I'm actually giving an example. Karin asked if we have similar examples. In response also to Reka's question, it takes a lot of effort. And actually, what I wanted to share is I come from ESA. Many of you know, we are the network of ECD for Europe. And our member organization in Romania had a grant to mobilize a business leaders network. And while they had that grant, it was working really well because it was day in, day out, exactly what you said, reaching out to individuals. When the grant stopped, they couldn't invest anymore that kind of time. But my example, which I will put in the chat, indeed, business leaders can contribute in so many ways with their own expertise, very much to what Sarah described. In Romania, this company that specializes in tax, so a group of tax lawyers, managed to persuade the Romanian parliament to change the fiscal code so that businesses who would invest in building a kindergarten next to their factory would get tax credit. And that boosted an effort, of course, in the country where there's a shortage also in the infrastructure. So I'll stop here. You'll see the example in the chat. And also, there is an event, a global event organized by one of our partners, which will look exactly at how to build such partnerships between ECT and business leaders. So I encourage you to have a look. I put everything in the chat. But thank you so much. Very, very interesting. And if there is time, I'm curious, how did you manage to bring, Sarah, how did you manage to bring, what was the argument to bring those those companies to this task force?
Thank you, Liana.
Hi, Liana. That event you mentioned, that I'm also attending that, but it looks like a good one. I think that's the question. I have a very annoying answer to that question, and honestly, we have a princess. And that, I'm afraid, is that if we're going to be honest about it, how we can very quickly bring those CEOs together. And I'm not going to lie, that's how we can do it, and we can do it quickly. And that's on us, therefore, to kind of spread that that influencing power that we have. And actually, what I love about the things we've done, since the report launched last year, we've done lots of roundtables, as I mentioned, around the country, bringing together regional business leaders and local charities. And the stuff that I love the most is when I have businesses arrive, and it's normally a breakfast or some kind of roundtable, and they come and they're like, I don't really know I'm coming here, but I got something which said Royal on it, so I thought I'd show up. There's probably going to be some nice pastries. And then actually the magic that happens when they realize what they can do, and we're not asking huge things often for a business here. And I give an example of a construction company who arrived at an event we held in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago, who clearly did not know why he was in the room when he first arrived, was very happy to be there, got his coffee, sat down next to a charity lead, and suddenly he realized, he had this enormous power, because as part of construction, the way constructions are, set up in the UK, there has to be some of that investment has to go to local local projects. And actually, he'd been kind of doing a tick box exercise where he'd sent a couple of his team to go and talk at a school. Hadn't thought about it. That was just like tick box. He was doing his community piece. And suddenly he realized he could have so much more influence and really impact the local community by working with this charity leader. And it was just like this amazing moment of like bringing people together. So look, that's, again, it's an annoying, we can do that in a way that that plays to our strengths. But yeah, certainly we see that as our responsibility to kind of amplify that and bring more people to the conversation. Because my other big problem, and I think I've said this to you before, Liana, is that it's great us all being here, and it's amazing having someone from Volkswagen here too, but we need businesses in this room. We need the actual businesses to be talking with us. Otherwise, we'll just go around in circles.
Thank you, Sarah. Have you maybe considered Rent a Princess business?
Yes, Maxim, we're very much considering that. It would be good, I know.
Thank you. Ivanka, please.
Thank you very much. And first, I would like to thank Sarah and James for presenting the Roll Foundation's activity. And thank you for sharing the report in advance. I think it's a brilliant tool for all of us because, like Liana, we are a member organization from Bulgaria. We all struggle to bring the case to companies to really focus early childhood development in their CSR strategies. So I don't have a real question, but a short reflection. When I was the Minister of Labor and Social Policy almost a year ago, I noticed that for many ministers, early childhood development is not a priority policy because it's neither health nor education nor social protection. So I think one of the ways the Royal Foundation can support influencing policymakers at the European Union level, but also national government level, is to increase the awareness that there is no sustainable economic development, especially now the European Union is trying to obviously consolidate around investments to make Europe more competitive, unless there is a clear investment in early childhood development. So that's an area where I think we have to unite forces. And my second reflection is I just finished an impact assessment of a CSR strategy of one of the biggest donor in Bulgaria, very, very influential company. And I was really surprised that none of their partners, employees, leadership team, and people on their grassroots level thought that this company should invest in early childhood development. They were very, very focused around investing in environment, investing in improving the lives of people in vulnerable situations, which in my country would mean poor children, Roma families, whatever. But none of them thought that one of the biggest investments of this company could be early childhood development. So I personally think that the connection between ESG, corporate social strategy, and ECD is not there. Of course, there's a practitioner who has done a lot of practice work with innovative ECD services in Bulgaria. I know the reason why investments are great. But how can we scale up the good practices? How can we change governments and corporate strategies so that our attempts can be sustainable? It's a big question mark. And how can we do it together? Because I think we have lots of pockets of good practices, but there seems to be a need now for cohesion. So I'm available, and if there are future opportunities to discuss joint initiatives, welcome to Sofia, and I would be very happy to discuss this topic with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivanka. That was such an articulately phrased reflection, and yeah, I 100% agree. And yeah, let's keep talking because we have to change this.
All right. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Teresa, we don't have more time for more questions, but wait a second. I have some news from the studio saying that we will have a part 2 of this conversation. So stay tuned. There will be a part 2 of this topic sometimes in May. So please follow the Places to Grow social media or subscribe to our newsletter, and you will get the date and time of the second part of this very, very exciting conversation, so we can continue there. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you very much again, Sarah, James, and Karin, for your presentations, and for everyone to be here and supporting the case of the quality early childhood development. I wish you a pleasant rest of the day and a beautiful weekend that is not far away, because it's Wednesday, we are half through. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you.
So much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you. Bye.
Bye.